Hi, and welcome back to Wildman Wheels. Today, we're going to be jumping in on this old weed eater here. See if we can't get her back running again. It's been sitting for I don't know how long. You can obviously see we've got some sun bleaching. So that kind of tells me it's probably sitting outside for an extended period of time, which isn't great. But I don't think that's going to necessarily stop us from getting this thing running. This is a newer model of weed eater. And so it doesn't, I can't see on here where we have the high speed and low speed adjustment settings on here. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. But we'll have to dig into this and see if we can't get this thing to run. All right, so the first thing you always want to do, if you have something that's unknown, right? Maybe if it's your weed eater and you've had it and you just parked it for the summer or for the winter, and you know it's a good weed eater, then you probably don't have to worry about this. But if you don't know, you picked up, somebody gave you a weed eater like this one. Somebody just gave me this weed eater, said, "Hey, you can have it if you want it." And I said, "Sure, why not?" The first thing you want to check is, do you have compression? So just pull on it. Definitely have some compression. Second thing we're going to want to check is see, do we have spark? So we're going to go ahead and pull the spark plug out. Pulling the spark plug out, we can do two things. First off, we can check the condition of the engine the last time it ran, and then we can also check and see if we have any spark. This guy right here, it actually looks like the engine was running really well. If you look right here at the spark plug, you can see the porcelain right up here at the base. You can see that it's like a brown color. There is a little bit of black, not much, but it's brown. We can see we do have a gap on the spark plug. We can see that the actual electrode here isn't worn down weird. It's nice and square across the edges of it. And the porcelain doesn't have any weird discolorations. The porcelain, when it's brand new, is going to be the same color white that it is down here. And so we can see that there's some brown, a little bit of black, which kind of tells me is maybe running a touch rich, but all in all, not too bad. These little crusties here on the outside edges, not too bad. This definitely was not running too rich, and it wasn't running too lean. All right, so now we know we got a pretty decent spark plug in this bad boy. Let's go ahead and check and see if we can see any spark. They don't really give you a whole lot of space in here. All right, I'm gonna have to look through the back of it right here. Make sure you got your on-off switch is in the on position. And let's go ahead and pull this thing over. I see spark in there. So we've got spark. We know our switch works. We know our coil works. We know the spark plug's working. That's a really good sign. So we'll go ahead and put the spark plug back in. When you're tightening the spark plug down, remember, small engine, small spark plug, small torque. You don't got to get crazy with it. You want it nice and snug, but you don't got to get crazy. Okay, so the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to check the fuel system. We need to make sure we're getting fuel into the carburetor. Fuel lines look like they're very, very stiff, but if they're not leaking, this should be okay. This thing actually has quite a bit of dirt and debris kind of all over it. I'm going to close the choke because on these particular models, there's actually just a lever that just completely covers it, and I'm actually going to blow this out with compressed air. Try to get as much of this dirt and debris out of here. Safety squints. All right, now that we got everything cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to pull this carburetor. I just want to take a look and see if I can find adjusting screws for it. Some big old long screws we got going on there. All right. Just want to take a look at this bad boy. Careful we don't destroy any seals and we don't break any of the hoses. I'm not seeing any form of adjustment on this bad boy. I think our little rubber primer bulb is actually okay, which is kind of shocking. Those usually fail pretty regularly, and I actually went out and bought a little pack of primer bulbs. You can usually get these guys at like your Ace Hardware or True Value or even Home Depot. They usually have these. It's a variety pack, so it's just kind of, you know, one size fits all. So there's two different types of primer bulbs. There's ones that are like this, where we replace just the bulb itself, and then you have a style like this, which comes in its own little housing, and you have to purchase the entire housing on this one. For these style, which is on this guy right here, there's 4 screws. You'll take this metal plate off of the end of it, and you know what? Let's just change this one out just so you can see how it's done. So we got our little plate right here. We're going to use a screwdriver. That screw is loose. Perfect. We like loose screws. That screw is also loose. Perfect. Oh, that screw is almost tight, but it was also fairly loose. Okay, that one was a little bit of torque on it. So 2 of the 4 screws had some form of torque on it. Okay, so as you can see, we take the metal plate off, and that little rubber bulb just sits inside the plate, and then you just take it out. We want to check inside of here, make sure there's no debris or chunks or anything like that. We'll go ahead and open our little box here. It comes with 3 different sizes. So all you got to do is just pick the one that's closest to your size. That looks pretty close. That guy actually looks to be about spot on right there. Let's see how well does it fit. And that one fits. It's a little bit tight. Let's see how it fits inside of this. That one fits in there so-so. Let's try this medium-sized one here. Oh, that one fits in there nicely. Okay, that's the one we want right there. Let's go ahead and put it back into our little metal clip here. Let's get this installed. Man, that is stiff. I'm going to put it onto the carburetor. It actually kind of firmly seats into that little groove, and that's a little bit easier. I do see an Allen screw right down here on the bottom, and that may be the only adjustment that we're going to get out of this guy. All right, we can put our little cover, our little metal plate back on, and then we can just install our 4 screws. Your weed eater, so this is an Echo. It's a 2014 model. That's what I'm seeing on the tag right here. Yours may be an Echo. It might be a Steel. It might be a Home Light. It could be, I don't know, any other brand, but they all pretty much work exactly the same. So this is just kind of a guide. Look at yours. You'll be able to see. But if yours has this style, now you know how to change it out. If yours has the other style, if yours has the like this guy right here, these guys just have 2 little tabs, and you just take a flat screwdriver, and you just get right behind it, and you just kind of and just pry it out. It'll pop out. Make sure you remember which hose goes on which side. There are 2. Make sure which one goes on which side, and make sure you put it back in the right way. These are one-way check valves, so if you put them in backwards, they won't work. But that's also kind of the nice thing. If you put it in backwards and it doesn't work, you just pull it out, flip it over, put it back in, and then it should work. you got a 50-50 shot of getting it right. It's not going to mess anything up if you put it in backwards. And if you put it in backwards, it's not going to work at all. Remember, little screws, little torque. They don't have to be crazy tight, but just a scotch, make nice and snug. Okay, so those are all nice and snug. Carburetor here. This fuel line is very, very rigid and very brittle, so I really don't want to get too crazy with it. This right here is, see this little white guy right here? This is your vent breather for your fuel tank. So we'll check and make sure that that guy is working. It's got this nice little spot that it kind of clips into up over here. We have a inlet, we have an outlet, and then we have our little breather. Okay, so this guy's going to go on there like so. This little guy right here is a nut, and that's what your carburetor air cleaner screws onto, so it is important. Okay, so if we have compression and we have spark, all we got to do is make sure we get gasoline inside the cylinder and it's going to run. That should be the easy part. I'm going to leave the air cleaner off for now. And there's our old primer bulb. There's a new one. It is very stiff. That's okay. Let's get some gas here. Now, if yours has gas in it, and you don't know how long the gas has been in there, get rid of it. It's common misconception that small engines will run on anything you put in them. No, it sure won't. Contrary to popular belief, most small engines are actually very high performance. In a scale situation, right? This guy is, how many cc's is it? Well, it says a 225, so I would guess it's probably a 25 cc engine. What does it say on here? 21.2 cc's. Yeah. So 21.2 cc's, if you did the conversion rate for your cc's and the amount of horsepower that this thing's putting out, and you converted it over to, I don't know, a 6,000 cc engine, this thing would outperform a 6-liter or even a 5-liter automotive engine in terms of horsepower. Small engines, just in general, are like that. Even if you have your little 212 cc Predator engines, right? Those compared to a larger engine are actually very high performance, and they require pretty decent gasoline. So bad gasoline is bad gasoline. It's cheap. Just get rid of it. It's going to cause you more headaches, and it's going to than the $2 you're going to save. So I prefer going with the premix. It's just a little bit easier. We're going to give her about a half a tank. We're not going to go too crazy with it. Okay, so now we got this bad boy in here. Our pickup is down at the bottom of the tank, so it's going to be sucking fuel. So let's go ahead and hit our primer bulb. See if we get any fuel coming up. Oh, I see fuel coming up. Okay. There we go. Primer bulb is now, I wouldn't say full, but we got about a half. We got a couple good primes. Once you get fuel up into the primer bulb, you still got to give it like a half or one good little squirt to physically get the fuel from the primer bulb into the carburetor to prime the carburetor, hence the term primer bulb. Okay, so let's give her full choke. We got it this on. Let's see what happens. Oh, it tried to start. Okay, let's go half choke. No choke. Okay. So it sucked all the fuel out of the primer bulb. So let's go ahead and see if we can't get this thing to prime. You know what's happening. I think our breather We are leaking. We have a vacuum leak. I don't know if you can hear it. It's not sucking. There's a good chance that we're going to need to replace the fuel line on this guy. There we go. Okay, so just so you know, there is a small diaphragm inside of the carburetor, and it actually acts as an accelerator pump. And one of the things you're doing when you're using the primer bulb is you're actually squirting some fuel into that to give yourself that little primer, so when you give it some gas, it'll give you that little shot. Now, sometimes what can happen is that, especially if the carburetor or the machine's been sitting for quite a while, is that diaphragm can actually get hard. And so one of the things that you need to do is just get some gasoline into it. So this one lost its prime, and I'm assuming that diaphragm was a little bit stiff in there. I pulled the return line off of the primer bulb, and I started pumping on it, and I was able to get it to start to kind of suck up a little bit more gas, get it back inside of there until I saw some gas squirting out. Then I put the return line back on, and I was able to get it to fully fill. And now it's holding. So that tells me that that diaphragm inside of there is starting to kind of come back around. It's starting to get a little more pliable. So let's go ahead and see if we can't get this thing to start up. We're going to use the primer. Well, looky there. It smells terrible. I like things to idle as low as possible. As low as they can idle without actually dying. Okay, probably need to turn it up a little bit, so I'm going to put the air cleaner on. There she goes. I was really kind of hoping this was going to be more of a project for this video, but it wanted to run. What can I say? It wanted to. It was ready to rock and roll. Now, your weed eater may have a may have adjustment screws for your high-low idle. Let me show you. We talked about this a little bit last week when we were working on the chainsaw. Right here on the chainsaw, you can see right here, you actually have three. There's one that's labeled T, there's one that's labeled L, and there's one that's labeled H. I don't know if you can see that. Let me get you zoomed in a little bit. Let me grab my little O-ring pick here so I can point this out. So on this one right here, there's this screw up here. There's a T on it. There's an L right here, and there's an H right here. So L stands for your low or low speed idle. H stands for your high speed idle, and T stands for your throttle or your idle, your basic idle. When it's just sitting there idling, you can turn this up to bring your idle up or bring it down. That's your T, your L, and your H. What you're going to do if yours has this, you're going to want to set your throttle high. Crank it in, give it enough throttle so it starts and it runs and just stays running. We're not concerned with it being in a proper tune. Just get it so it stays running. Once it stays running, then you're going to, without touching the throttle yet, you're going to start with the low speed. You're going to adjust the low speed back and forth. A lot of times they only move about a quarter of a turn. You usually can't sit there and just screw and screw and screw them. You usually can only get about a quarter of a turn out of them. You're going to move it back and forth very slowly until you get the RPMs to raise up as high as they possibly can. So you'll adjust it one way and the RPMs will come down. You'll adjust it the other way and the RPMs will come up. Now you want to do this slowly to give the engine time to respond to the adjustments that you've made, right? So if you go from here and you just turn it here and go, oh, I didn't notice anything, and back, well, the engine hasn't had that chance to make any adjustments. So give it a little bit of a turn, wait for a second. Did it go up? Did it go down? Is it running worse? Okay, give it a little more. Is it worse, worse, worse? Okay, go back to here. Okay, it's starting to run a little better. Let's go this way. Oh, that's a little better, a little better, a little, oh, now it's a little worse. Okay, back, now it's better. Okay, better there than there. Better one, better two. Better two, better three. Kind of like, when you go to the eye doctor, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you'll kind of get to that point and you'll find, okay, right here is where it runs the best. Then we can go ahead and turn the idle down and get it down to an idle where it's nice, right? On like a chainsaw, you want to make sure the blade is not spinning. On a weed eater, you want to make sure the end is not spinning. That's how low you want the idle. Then you want to give it a little blip, a throttle, like that. Did it bog or did it immediately try to take off? If it bogged, then you need to give this a little bit more throttle on the low, okay? You need to give it a little, it needs extra fuel. It needs to be running a little bit rich to get, so when you give it that initial throttle, it's got that extra fuel to be able to immediately bring the RPMs up, okay? So you'll give it a little bit richer. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Tighten the screw, reduces the fuel, okay? If you think about it, you have a needle, and if you tighten the screw, it goes in further. You're restricting the amount of fuel that can flow through. If you're loosening it, you're opening up that and you're allowing more fuel through. So lefty-loosey gives it more fuel. So you'll come in here and you'll turn it to the left, just a little bit, not a lot. Then you'll test it again. Did it bog or is it better? Oh, it was better. Okay. Now you may notice the engine's not running quite as well, and that's okay. You can't finely tune the low side circuit and have the engine run perfectly at low and then be able to get it to come up to high idle quickly. You can't do that. You're going to have it make it run a little bit rough on the low side and then make it run really well on the high side, because two-stroke engines, generally speaking, for the applications that we use them for, are going to be running wide open throttle all the time. You're using a chainsaw, you're cutting down a tree, you're cutting up limbs. You're not running a chainsaw at half throttle. Same thing with a weed eater. You're not running a weed eater at half throttle. You're out there and you're just hanging on that sucker wide open, swinging it back and forth, cutting grass. So we're going to tune it to run really well at high idle, wide open throttle, and we're not going to worry so much about the low idle. We just want the low side to be good enough that it will idle without dying, and that it idles down low enough that the chain stops spinning or the head on the weed eater stops spinning. That's what we really want. So that's all we're really looking for. So keep giving this another lefty, just a smidge. We're not talking quarter turns, eighth turns. We're talking like 16ths or 30 seconds of a turn, just the tiniest little turn. Give it another blip. Did it get better or worse? Make another small adjustment. Better or worse. Now at this point you may have to actually come in here and give it maybe a little bit more throttle to turn the idle up a little bit, because it may have actually, may have made enough of adjustment on the load jet to actually cause the idle to not be as perfect as you want. So you may have to kind of back and forth between these two until you get it so when you bump it real quick, it goes boom, not but. If it makes that sound, that's bogging. If you bump it and it goes, that's where you want it to be. Then the next thing you're going to do is make sure your idle screw is set and it's idling where you want it. Now that you have your low speed set, the chain's not moving, it's idling nice and smooth. I mean, as smooth as a two-stroke can. The next thing you're going to do, wide open throttle. Lock that sucker in. Don't let it go anywhere. Now you're going to move over to the high side. Right here. And the same thing like you did with the low side. You're going to twist that back and forth until you hear the engine running at the highest possible RPM that's also the smoothest. So it may be running at the highest RPM, but you move it one way or the other and it actually smooths out. That's where you want it to be. Then you're done. You let it off. And it should drop right back down to a nice idle. If it doesn't, if it kind of bogs when it comes off of high idle down, then you can make a slight adjustment, but don't get too crazy with it because a lot of times you have your carburetor is basically flooded at that point. It's gone from full wide open flow to zero flow, and it can take a second for the engine to kind of eat through that gas a little bit, and then it'll kind of smooth out. So if that's the case, you can also turn the high idle down a little bit. Remember, righty tighty, tighty, less fuel, lefty loosey, loosey, more fuel. So you can give it just another, like I was saying, like a 32nd or a 16th of a degree turn, let off, and it should come down nice and quickly, but it shouldn't be too rich and run too gargly. But it's just just small adjustments back and forth. You know, do I need more fuel or less fuel at high idle? Do I need more fuel or less fuel at low idle? And then when it is at full idle and just sitting here, let me adjust this to make sure that the chain is not spinning or the mower head is not spinning. So that's if your weed eater has that. This weed eater doesn't have the option to do those adjustments. So it's kind of like it either works or it doesn't. This thing, I've personally had it for over a year, and I haven't attempted to start it. It's just been sitting in the corner for almost a year. The guy that I got it from said he hadn't ran it in several years, and the amount of dirt and the sun bleaching on the plastic kind of makes me think the thing has been sitting just out forever. And so it's kind of impressive that we literally just put a new primer bulb on it and put gas in it, and it started, and it actually runs pretty well. So this particular weed eater doesn't have any adjustments that I can make to the carburetor, no high speed or low speed adjustments. I can adjust the idle, and that's about it. I'm sure they did that for emissions. That's fine. They would rather have a weed eater out there running poorly, making tons of emissions, than give you the option to adjust it and potentially have bad emissions. But hey, whatever. That's not my job. One last little quick before we go. Your weed eater is going to be fine. You're going to be able to get it running. This is my personal, so I used to have a small engine repair business back in the day, and that's all I did. I did weed eaters, chainsaws, generators, push mowers, mini bikes, you name it. Anything with a small engine, I worked on it. My favorite things to work on, weed eaters and chainsaws. They are simple, 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 easy, simple. The simplest, easiest things to get to run. The second easiest things are like little small, like 5-horse engine class. You know, your Predator 212s, your 3-horse, your 5-horse, mini bikes, go-karts, things like that. Those are the second easiest thing to work on. The worst thing to work on, riding lawnmowers. They're just, those engines, the big engines, the 1-inch shaft engines are just in a totally different world. They've got funky, weird fuel shutoff solenoids and things in the carburetors. They're weird. They're very complex. These are very simple, very easy. One of the things is look at what you have. Figure out the brand, okay? This one's an Echo. It says SRM 225. If that's all the information that you have, you're fine. Now, on this guy right here, there is a tag. It's an emissions control tag that has some information on that right there. Behind that, we actually have a serial number tag, and it probably has a model number too. Yeah, well, the model number is SRM 225. So that's kind of the fun thing about small stuff like this. Usually, whatever it's called, that's the model. So you can literally go, and this is worst case scenario, for something like this, okay? No joke. You get this thing and you're like, you know what? I know this thing's probably junk. You've pulled over it a couple times. I know it's got some compression. I can hear the compression. I don't want to mess with this. I just want it to work. This is what you do. You go on Amazon and you look up Echo SRM 225 carburetor. It's going to come up with a carburetor for your SRM 225. I don't know what you have. You might have a Husqvarna, you might have a Steel, you might have a Homelite. I don't know. But find your model number and just type that in Amazon. Just carburetor. You'll find a direct replacement carburetor. Now, it's not going to be OEM. And that's what I'm saying. You could go online to Echo and purchase the Echo carburetor. The Echo carburetor is going to be $90 or $100 for this little dinky guy, okay? Or you could go on Amazon and you could buy the Chinesium one, and it's going to come with a carburetor. It's going to come with the air cleaner. It's going to come with a new spark plug. It's going to come with all the new hoses. It's going to come with a breather. It's going to come with a pickup. It's going to come with the grommet for the fuel tank. It's going to come with everything that you could possibly replace on this to make it work for $20. It's up to you. Now, the carburetor, you go buy it from Echo. You go buy an Echo carburetor from Echo. It's going to cost you like $100. And there's like a 93% chance that that carburetor that you bought from Echo was actually made by the Chinese company that you could have bought directly from on Amazon. Let's be honest. Echo's not making the carburetors. They're buying them from somebody else and just sticking them on. So just take that with a grain of salt. But like I said, you can go buy a kit. Just search through. You'll find somebody. A lot of times, of some kind of description. It says this kit fits XYZ models, and you can make sure your exact models listed in there. A lot of times, you can find people that talk about it. You know, the reviews. And I put this on my Echo, whatever, and it worked great, and I had, it was great, perfect. A lot of times, you can actually find carburetors, Chinese carburetors, and they'll have the high-low. So maybe yours didn't have the high-low, like this one. Adjustment, but you might find a carburetor that bolts right on, hooks up, and it's exactly the same as this, but it's got the high-low adjustment on it. And then you can come back here, and then you can tune it in. It's not too difficult. And once you've done it once, you get the hang of it. You just tinker with it. It just takes a little bit of time tinkering. But yeah, so that's my recommendation to you. So it's getting close to that. Oh, one quick thing. Last thing. Chainsaws and weed eaters alike, both. Small, dinky little two-stroke engines. This is a 21cc, that's a 33cc. Small little dinky two-stroke engines. Do not tune them. Do not do the high-low, the high-idle, none of that, unless the engine is fully loaded. And what I mean by that, air cleaner needs to be clean and installed onto the carburetor. On a weed eater, you have your head that you're going to have on the end of it. That needs to be on, and it needs to be full of wire, your trimmer line, and the trimmer line needs to be fully extended. Okay, so you need, if you're supposed to have 8 inches of trimmer line hanging off the end of it, you need to make sure you have 8 inches of trimmer line hanging off the end of it. It needs to be at full load. With a chainsaw, air cleaner needs to be on, the bar needs to be installed, the chain needs to be on the bar, and the chain needs to be properly tensioned before you do any tuning of the carburetor. If you don't have a head on it, you don't have any line on it, you don't have the air cleaner on it, and you sit there and you make that thing run so good, it's so perfect, and then you're like, okay, cool, let's go do some stuff. Let's go trim up the weeds. Put the air cleaner on, you go get the head, you get it spooled up, you hook the head on there, you go to fire it up, and then you start running, and the thing runs like absolute garbage. Well, that's because your air-fuel ratio is completely off for a load. So make sure when you tune it fully loaded. Air cleaner, spooled up with wire, the whole 9 yards, and then get it running tip-top. Then when you take it out and you go to run it, it'll still be running tip-top. Same thing with a weed eater, I don't know, everything else. When it comes to like cars and stuff, if you're getting to real high performance situations, it's the same kind of thing. You got to make sure you got it, whatever. But for your average everyday, old school car or whatever like that, you can tune it and get it running without the air cleaner, put the air cleaner on. It's not going to make that big of a difference. But these little guys, they're very high performance engines for their size. They put out a lot of power for the size that they are. If you actually looked at the piston inside of this thing, it's probably about that big, about that tall. It's a dinky little piston. And actually, if you guys would like, I really have no purpose for this. I don't live in a place where I need to weed eat. If you would like, I could pull this thing completely apart. If you want to see what does a weed eater engine look like on the inside, like how tiny is a weed eater engine, let me know. Drop it down in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to tear this engine apart and we can take a look at it and we can see exactly how this thing works. We might even put it back together and see if we can't make it run again too. All right, that's gonna do it for this week. We got this thing running. It really didn't take as much effort as I was kind of hoping. I was kind of hoping it was gonna be a little cantankerous and I was gonna be able to walk through some steps. But that also kind of just goes to show you that these weed eaters, they just kind of want to run. They just want to work. So, just make sure you got good fuel line on there. The number one thing, just real quick before we leave, fresh gas, okay? Dump out last year's gas. That was last year's gas. You got all the use out of it you're going to use. Fresh gas. Go get you some premix gasoline and just put it in there. Whatever. This is VP, there's True Fuel, there's 4 or 5 different brands out there. Just get you some premixed gas. It doesn't have ethanol in it, and so when you let this thing sit over this winter and you come back, it's not the chances of the carburetor being gummed up is drastically reduced. A lot of places you can actually purchase non-ethanol gasoline at the gas pump, and if that's the case and you have that option, please do that. But you run the risk of all of the gas that's in that hose is ethanol gasoline, and if you're just buying 1 gallon of gas, even though you hit the non-ethanol gas, you're going to pump 1/4 gallon of ethanol gas into your jug before you actually get the non-ethanol gas in there. So now you have a blended mix of ethanol gas and non-ethanol gas, and it's just really doesn't come out to be worth much of anything. So just go buy you a jug of, it's non-ethanol. You don't have to worry about it. It's really a heck of a lot better for the carburetors, runs better, and it smells really good. You'll be out there ripping, and your gasoline's going to smell really good. It's going to smell like a race car. It's awesome. So have yourselves a wonderful weekend.